At last, David's fortunes are looking up, with his arrival at Aunt Betsey's, the dismissal of the Murdstones, and the prospect of returning to school. As a child, whom did David love? I think we'd all agree that his first love, now preserved as a faded daguerreotype of memory, was his mother, who somehow merged in his infant mind with Peggotty, the first of several surrogate mothers. His first romantic attachment, though, was undoubtedly little Emily, for whom I'm sure all of us have a tender spot. But then there's his admiration for, devotion to, and yes, love of Steerforth. It's easy to discern potentially homoerotic elements in their relationship, but Dickens would rather have us see Steerforth as the embodiment of David's gentlemanly ideal. And let's not forget David's indebtedness to and respect for Dan Peggotty, the simple, kind-hearted and benevolent paterfamilias to all who take refuge in his beached Noah's Ark. September 1849 seems to have been a relatively quiet month for world news. But I'll just note that Ivan Pavlov, one of the founders of behaviorism, was born in this month, and the pharmaceutical firm Pfizer, famed for little blue pills and COVID shots, was founded in New York. Dickens was by now well into full swing, relatively painlessly meeting the monthly deadline for his work in progress, the now iconic novel which we're currently reading. He remained for the whole of September at Bonchurch, despite writing to John Forster how the climate there somehow depressed his vital forces. He then had to act as nursemaid to his friend, the artist John Leech, who was badly hurt and then treated with the use of leeches when he was sent flying by a strong wave while the pair were bathing in the sea. Dickens still found energy for some family games and gave a considerable amount of thought to a periodical that he wanted to launch. Watch this space for how that idea took shape. I mentioned last time that Dickens had just met a real Mr. Charles Dick, which inspired the author to bestow that name onto a character that he was about to bring into the story. If I now add that Dick was a nickname used by both Dickens and others to refer to himself, then we can begin to see that Mr. Dick functions in the novel as an alter ego for the author. Mr. Dick himself is an aspiring author, but suffers from a debilitating mania which is almost a physical manifestation of writer's block. His obsession with the head of King Charles, about to be cut off on the chopping block. There's a historically important ad on the second page of this month's Advertiser announcing a new initiative by the publisher George Routledge. Amusement while travelling. Published monthly. 1 shilling each. The Railway Library. Routledge was a pioneer in offering the reading and train travelling public quality fiction in a cheap, handy and virtually throwaway form. And the first title in their list is Jane Austen's Sense and Sensibility. This marked the beginning of renewed popular interest in Austen's work, an author, by the way, that Dickens is never known to have read. And it marked the beginning of an important series, Routledge's Railway Library, which would go on to include almost 1,300 titles over the next 50 years, in what is commonly known as Yellowback format, imitated by most other fiction publishers, including Chapman and Hall, with Dickens's works appearing in this format, in green rather than yellow, during the 1860s. The scene depicts the moment of meeting between the bedraggled and footsore David and his astonished Aunt Betsey, with donkeys and donkey boys in the background. Then we're treated to the showdown between Aunt Betsey and the Murdstones, with David trussed up in Mr. Dick's cast-offs and Dick himself looking on, mildly bemused. Once the awful Murdstones are summarily dismissed, Aunt Betsey starts to make plans. "You'll consider yourself guardian, jointly with me, of this child, Mr. Dick," said my aunt. "I shall be delighted," said Mr. Dick, "to be the guardian of David's son." "Very good," returned my aunt. "That's settled. I've been thinking, do you know, Mr. Dick, that I might call him Trotwood. Certainly, certainly. Call him Trotwood, certainly, said Mr. Dick. David's son Trotwood. Trotwood Copperfield, you mean, returned my aunt. Yes, to be sure, yes, Trotwood Copperfield, said Mr. Dick, a little abashed. Thus I began my new life, in a new name, and with everything new about me. I'd like you to take a close look at the paragraph in chapter 15 describing the Wickfield residence, which starts, "At length we stopped before a very old house." What does Mr. Wickfield's house remind you of or suggest to you? Dickens the realist. See you next time.